Dario Amodei. He left OpenAI because he was worried about ethics in AI. He was worried about AI falling into the wrong hands. So working with the Pope is a huge boon for them
I
and
wonder if
trust.
the Vatican got any equity for that. We've got some concerning news specifically around Meta and Google and safety guards. The Financial Times reported this past week that a number of AI researchers were able to bypass safety guards on Meta and Google's AI models in only minutes using modified systems that enabled responses on biological weapons, malware creation, and child exploitation material. Both companies have cited invest or have noted that they've invested heavily in AI alignment and content moderation. But the speed of circumvention, which was minutes, not hours, highlights a fundamental flaw in their limitations or safety guards that they've been putting around these models. The findings come as open weight AI models have been proliferating globally, and that makes it very easy for bad actors to download, modify, and redeploy frontier AI without the safety layers that their original labs built in. And this lands the same exact week that the US government announced that it wants to pre-screen AI models before public release. And we've got a fun story coming up next, specifically around the Pope that issued an encyclical specifically about AI safety and human dignity, citing value misalignment. So security researchers and regulators are watching closely as this news has been hitting over the past week. The EU's AI Act compliance review cycle begins in the third quarter of this year, and that gives Brussels a concrete regulatory mechanism to act on findings like these. I'm sure this is not the end of what we see around LLMs being, let's say, modified or corrupted or hacked potentially to give some output that bad actors would want to extract from it. It's a huge issue when
Yeah.
it comes to AI model weights, especially considering that Anthropic's model weights were leaked, I think, previously, and specifically by, I believe, like Chinese bad actors that had tried to reverse engineer through prompt injection. Mello, what's your take on this, man? It's actually quite concerning, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's that new of an issue. Like, you're allowed to disseminate information. Some stuff is banned, like some books are banned, some websites are banned. You have to go to the dark web to access them. And now this is the next iteration of that battle. So, like the open weight model problem, like you mentioned, is the one that makes this like structurally unsolvable, basically, with current approaches. So, like, when you publish the weight of a model, which you do if you're making open source things, like some of these Chinese labs are doing everything open weight. So when you're publishing that, you can download it, remove the safety layers, and run it without the original company's infrastructure. So uh, it's actually very easy to do with some of these open models. And the optimist in me says this is great. Like, I want less control from big companies. I want the ability to take off this nonsense censoring so that I can get raw, unfiltered, actual information that is not gate kept from humanity. Like, if we're truly sharing a mind and access to all information, we should have that. But at the same time, yeah, there's a lot of like very interesting security angles here. Like, AI enabled cyber attacks that anybody can perpetrate with access to these models shouldn't be that difficult in the future. These things are getting stronger every day. And then the bioweapons angle is also the one that should alarm people more. Like, I remember when I was younger, I heard about these underground manifestos, teaching you how to make bombs and stuff, like teaching you how to survive in survival situations and fight the government. And they made it completely illegal. I think it was like the Weather Underground. And now, if you have an open weighted LLM that can just access anything, it can tell you how to do anything. Yeah, that presents some new problems that we haven't had to face as a civilization
Man,
before.
I know exactly what you're talking about. But I think Weather Underground is like an actual weather website, but I forget what the what the document was. It was like a big document that was like circulating across like parts of the
It
web.
was,
Um,
I think it's like
yeah,
the
yeah,
Anarchist
Anarchist
Cookbook.
Cookbook. That's
That's
what it
that's
was
what it's
called.
called.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a good point, right? We're getting to a point where people that want to use artificial intelligence or LLM technologies to do things that are
Hmm.
like subversive or maybe even downright malicious or violent, like they have the capability to do so. That's why these open models exist, not to enable like criminal activity, but to allow anyone to use them and benefit from this technology. And it's just natural step of evolution along this AI journey that we're all along, where these things are going to be
Mhm.
used for different acts like that. I don't know if there's any way to realistically prevent it, but in the context of frontier models that are owned by private companies that are not open source, this is a persisting problem that has not yet been solved. And so I think there needs to be a lot more discussion around how we can maintain some safety guards, or how we can push Google, Meta, and the likes to maintain deeper safety guards, or maybe even adopt infrastructure that removes the visibility into some of these model weights, or some of the way that these models are constructed, or the way that they behave, to prevent any of these bad actors from extracting this knowledge from these frontier models that, let's be honest, are probably far more advanced than a lot of the open source available models out there.
Yeah, for now at least. But I think those open weighted models will catch up. And yeah, how do you regulate that? They're open weighted. You can't really restrict access in any meaningful way, especially if you run them on your own devices, like on edge devices. So yeah, we're gonna see some interesting developments there. I'm sure we're gonna be talking about this quite a bit going forward.
This new story that's breaking out of the EU, the European Commission apparently is preparing a fine in the hundreds of millions of euros for Google related to AI practices and dominance in search and advertising. And the action comes at a very critical moment. We talked about Google's AI credibility hurt in this past week, after researchers had established they're able to remove its safety guardrails in minutes, and also antitrust cases for search dominance and self-preferencing via AI overviews, now visually obvious to any user. I think many people that have been using Google search over the past several weeks have noticed that Google search is now pretty much an AI prompt window. The EU's Digital Markets Act
Mhm.
that you were referring to, their compliance review cycle is supposed to begin Q3 of 2026. So they've been delaying that. But hopefully that compliance cycle does provide Brussels with some concrete legislative framework to act on. And Google's mandatory AI search rollout might be characterized as self-preferencing under DMA rules. So, I mean, all of this is kind of manifesting in, we need some regulation, we need some framework, but in the meantime, let's just find the hell out of them and make some money. Google's stock rose 34% last month on strong earnings. We don't know how this nine-figure fine is going to shake out in, as far as what the market perceives it to be. But honestly, that nine-figure fine, hundreds of millions of euros, is just a blip. It's a rounding error financially for Google. So the precedent it sets is not very, very big. So yeah, I mean, Mello, how do you feel like, specifically around like fining in this instance? Do you think that is sending a message to the industry, or do you think it's just some sort of like temporary measure to try and benefit, let's say lawmakers in a time of uncertainty?
Yeah, I mean, I'm conflicted. I'm from the U.S. Obviously, I live in Europe. I see a lot of the people complaining that, oh, in Europe they're anti-progress. They're fining and regulating everything to death. And in some ways that's true. In some ways they could be a little more lenient and approving of new technologies and working more closely with the heads of these industries. At the same time, like Google, all these tech companies, they get away with murder, and Europe is the only one putting their foot down and actually trying to do something about it. And unfortunately, these fines are inconsequential. They're slaps on the wrist, or maybe even slaps on the finger. So maybe we need to figure out how to penalize and de-incentivize these companies to act maliciously, because they, at the end of the day, they chalk it up as a business expense. Like, we're going to break the law and we're going to pay a fine, and it's going to make sense. Our shares are going to go up in value. That's ultimately the calculation. So maybe we need to take a percentage of revenue or something like that and hit them really where it hurts. But I think interestingly enough, there was the Google conference last week, and then DuckDuckGo had installs up 30%. So competitors are starting to capitalize on this gap in the market. People are tired of these AI taking over everything. So I think some people are saying, we just want our search engines back. We want to be able to search and navigate the web like we've been doing for a few decades now. And yeah, I don't know what's going to happen next there, but I think you and I talked about too, like 1 or 2 weeks ago. There was a story about Google just brute force installing spyware or whatever you want to call it on devices, sneaking it in, packaging it in with Chrome installation. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was some relation here, or if there's future like fines coming from other, I don't know, regulatory bodies. But it seems like they calculate these things. All of these tech firms do these things knowing that they'll eventually be penalized. But they say, how long can we get away for with this? And is it worth? Is it a cost of doing business basically for us? So when you're talking about moving hundreds of billions of dollars for OpEx expenditure to build data centers to do all this is like you said, a blip. It's nothing. It's crumbs basically.
Absolutely. And you were referring to Chrome users finding out that Google had been secretly installing a local LLM or a mini LLM on devices
Yeah.
that met a specific threshold for having enough storage on the device and computational capability. There was a lot of lack of transparency there, and lack of communication or correspondence by Google. They kind of like scrambled to try and release the truth about what they were doing, but it's still not clear what the hell they were doing as far as installing a localized LLM on people's phones and laptops. It may have been for a number of reasons, but yeah, that might have fed into this as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's not all bad. It's not all doom and gloom for
Yeah.
AI doomers.
This next story is a little bit doom and gloom, unfortunately, but just to round out our AI section, we got to return back to doom and gloom. Apparently, Pope Leo just signed his first major theological document, an encyclical, this last week, and he signed it on the 131st and 135th anniversary of Rerum Novorium, the Church's foundational labor rights document. He published it on May 25th under the title Magnifica Humanitas on safeguarding the human person in the time of artificial intelligence. He presented it to the Vatican alongside Christopher Olah, who is the co-founder of Anthropic, in a deliberate gesture of dialogue between religious leadership and AI industry leadership. And so this encyclical warns that the control of AI must not remain in the hands of a few, and that automation risks leaving workers in forced inactivity, and frames AI development as a Tower of Babel moment for humanity, citing recent AI layoffs and a lot of other controversy. It calls for independent oversight, mandatory accountability, and user education. So this is a huge moment when it comes to cultural shift around AI. We don't often see a pope getting involved in matters of technology, but because AI has been on the forefront of so many headlines, of so many people's minds, it's been used for a lot of good and a lot of controversy and a lot of bad all together. It's interesting to see that the Pope is getting involved and saying, hey, we need a sort of human moment, and we need to think about this from a theological standpoint. Funny enough, and ironically enough, an AI detector analysis had flagged the encyclical of being 46% AI written, generating immediate commentary about whether the Pope used AI to write this document, warning about AI. I don't know how much to read into that. Personally, I've used some of these AI content detectors before for my own writing, for work documents that we create. Apparently, I have like a 96% AI writing style. So I'm not sure how accurate it is, but it is funny to note. But yeah, Mello, what do you think about the Pope's involvement here?
Yeah, I think that's just because you know how to technically write.
Maybe.
Technical writing is basically just AI now. Like they're one and the same. But yeah, those detectors are nonsense. Like I've tested my own writing too, and I think I have a pretty unique way of writing, and sometimes it gets flagged as AI. So I wouldn't read too much into it, but it is pretty funny irony if the Pope did indeed use AI to write this encyclical. Like not only is it the first encyclical about this kind of technology in our modern day, but it's also the first one written by AI. But yeah, I think the main story here is like the choice to present it alongside an Anthropic co-founder. That's like a detail worth lingering on, because like the Vatican historically has to be very agnostic and not like it's very cautious not to endorse specific countries or technologies or companies, and sharing the stage and working with Anthropic about AI concentration of power is a complicated signal. I saw a lot of memes and interesting, funny things too, like on LinkedIn saying, Pope Leo has now joined as a senior advisor to Anthropic or chief ethics officer or something like that. Obviously, it's not the case, but Anthropic. We've talked about how shrewdly they've been operating lately, and all of the winning moves they're making, and like signing on Pope Leo as an unofficial, I don't know,
Ambassador. Yeah.
influencer here in this regard. Yeah, ambassador, whatever you want to call it. But the Anthropic stood apart from the rest, and it actually overtook not only in valuation, but it overtook OpenAI in usage. Like it actually has a higher market share. It has more users now officially than ChatGPT officially this week, which is also big news. But part of this is due to their stance on ethics, even if it's not entirely true, even if they are still working with the Pentagon and Department of War. They have this appearance that they've been very carefully cultivating, that they are the people's champion. They're the watchdogs. Dario Amodei, he left OpenAI because he was worried about ethics in AI. He was worried about AI falling into the wrong hands. So working with the Pope is a huge boon for them. Last week, they stole one of the co-founders of OpenAI, and now they're working closely with the Pope on AI ethics and saying, hey, we understand that this is an existential threat for humanity, and that's why we're working with the Pope, the head of the Catholic Church right now. Like it's I don't know. Like I don't know how much higher Anthropic can climb right now.
It is a good point. I mean, they are the logical choice, right? They have been the ones standing in the forefront saying, hey, let's slow things down a little bit. Whether it's all PR or marketing or not, like I don't see any other industry leader that Anthropic can stand next to, besides potentially some people working on open source models.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're very clearly making a staking that claim. Like this is us. We are the adult in the room,
Yeah.
the one you
I
can
wonder
trust.
if the Vatican got any equity for that.
Investment. Hey, it's your friend Mello from Arcanum Ventures. If you got any value out of this video whatsoever, we want to hear about it. Leave us a comment in the comment section. We look forward each and every week to reading those, and maybe give us a subscribe too, because we put out new content all the time, 4 or 5 videos a week. So maybe check one out now. Take it easy.